Hello and welcome to the Monday Night Live show, where together we discover what's going down around the underground scene with a focus on independent publishing. And the date is October 30th, 2023, and this show is brought to you by yours truly, the man broadcasting from behind the curtain. You know who I am, because if you don't know by now, you can always visit www.livefreeliverich.com or simply Google his name and you can find out. Now, I'd like to take this time, slide right inside my first segment of the night, where I like to shine a spotlight on some books. That's right. That are currently available or coming soon to an online store near you. But before I do, I have a special guest that I would like to introduce. And my guest tonight is not only established as both a published poet and multi-genre author, but if you ask me, I would also say that she is the Booktube Tag Team Champion for 2023. That's right. It is my pleasure to welcome Nicole from Nicole's Bookish Nook to the Monday Night Live stream. Welcome.
Hello. Right before Halloween.
Yes. Hi there. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good. I think this is one of the few streams that I can participate in because I am Pacific time, and so many do at 6 a.m. my time, 5 a.m. I'm like, I like you, but I don't love you. So I'm not getting up at that time. But finally, yay.
So what'd you think about your introduction, Tag Team Champion for 2023?
I like that, though. I know there's a lot of people that do it or do a tag every week, and that's a lot. But I just do whenever I get tagged. But
I do think that it's commendable, though, that you at least every now and then you try to come up with ways to to kind of interact with other creators that are in this this YouTube space that we share. And because I think that Booktube overall is a good place specifically for readers to kind of come together and discuss and share the books that they enjoy, or at least enjoy talking about. And I would say, especially over the past few years, one thing that I've noticed is that more creators within this sphere have been embracing indie lit or independently published books. So I'm not sure if that's something that you have also kind of noticed during your time in this space.
Yeah, I think the more smaller channels, I started 6 years ago when it was just young adult, and then I was not that young adult, but I was young adult enough that I was reading the YA along, and then it got really tiring after a while because it just is not for an adult that just graduated college. Right? So I tried, but then I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm going to read what I want. And it's kind of moved away from mainly young adult, thank God. Okay. So, because for a very long time, it was just young adult, just traditionally published. Sometimes you would get a fantasy romance, and that was the big train. But now there are, I think there are a few bigger channels, and I'm talking 5,000, that do indie, or at least mainly traditional published, and then also indie. And you know what? Just I don't care. Just throw some in. That's
right.
What I do.
Kind of trickling, right? Kind of over the year. Well, just from what I've noticed, at least, like I said, over the past 3 years, where I've really kind of gotten involved with it, is that's what I've noticed. It started kind of trickling in there, which I think is cool, because I mean, it kind of has turned Booktube as it has kind of turned Booktube into like a place, almost like a means of discovery for a lot of indie authors who otherwise, they might not have even really been known, by a lot of readers.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I think that's a positive thing for sure. And one thing that I've noticed that as an author yourself, like you actually offer a bit of variety for your readers. So I would say if someone is watching this show and is discovering you for the first time, what kind of genres can they expect to find in your back catalog?
Oh, like as writer or reader?
Like as a reader, and they're checking out your back catalog of published works, like what kind of stuff are they going to find from Nicole?
I just recently got into horror, so there's quite a few horror stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then but mainly it for a very, very long time was historical fiction and fantasy. And I randomly got into horror because I started with 1920s cozy mystery with the Phryne Fisher's book series, because that was on Netflix as a TV show. Loved it. Didn't realize it was a book series, and I've read 22 books in that series. I'm waiting for the 23rd to arrive. TikTok. I mean, obsessed, right? And so it just spiraled into now it's like splatterpunk, satire, extreme
Really?
horror. It's not, yeah. We went to cozy, flapper. All right. No, now we're like Chandler Morrison, but who is one of my favorite horror authors. And he started out indie, and now he recently signed with, I don't know if he has an agent, but there are a lot of small press horror publishers that help out, because there was a good point with Chandler where his books were not available on Amazon unless you got it used because of the content in his books. He was having a little problem with that. But then he signed on to, I forget the press, and now you can find them. And they redid one of his book covers. I don't know if they're going to go backwards or what he's done with that, but there are some really good small presses, especially with horror, that helps you out, or else after a certain point he was kind of kicked off for a little bit there.
So was he like an inspiration for you to like kind of want to get into writing horror?
No, I just do mystery, urban fantasy mystery. That was inspired by a very random in high school in biology class, because a scientist, and I don't even remember the first name, I don't remember what scientist it was, but his last name was Bloodsworth. And I was like, oh, that's a great last name. And there we go. My vampire's name is Thomas Bloodsworth and Obsidian Murders. And it has definitely changed over the years. And I didn't realize that it was urban fantasy. I just thought, oh, it's contemporary fantasy and there's a little mystery in there. But then I started reading urban fantasy and I realized, oh, well, duh, it's set in DC. Like, it's a big city.
Sure. Let's jump right into it. I mean, hey, we talk. So basically, just to sum that up, so for those who may be discovering you for the first time, they're going to go and they're going to look. You have published some poetry, like some chapbooks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you have a fantasy series, if I'm not mistaken, right? A fantasy series. Is that the
urban fantasy series under my pen name that's just for urban fantasy. And then I have, it kind of goes from straight up historical fiction.
I know the historical fiction one.
And then historical fiction, very light. And then Irish fantasy. So it's like a trajectory of fantasy that we're going into.
Yeah.
Just follow the publication date and you get deeper into the fantasy.
Yeah, so let's get into that urban fantasy. Let's lean into that urban fantasy a little bit, and that is which brings us to the reason why you are here tonight, and that is to introduce your newest release, which is the Obsidian Murders. So this is book one of this new urban fantasy series here. Would you like to kind of just introduce, give us a short synopsis or the blurb of what this one's about?
Yeah, so we follow Tessa O'Hara, who's trying to get into journalism. She got a journalism degree. She spent a lot of money. She wants to do some journalism, right? But she's just fresh out of college. It's a hard time, especially she moved to DC. That's very competitive. And what makes her different is that she has the magical ability to see all other beings. And what would be other beings? It's just basically mythical creatures. But in this world, they're called other beings because they're not mythical to certain people, usually Wiccans or neo pagans, which you see in this book and throughout the series. That helps her out. And she's friends with them because she is not crazy to them because they can see the fairies running around stealing gummy worms in the 7-Eleven, and she can too. So there, but everywhere else, she really can't talk about her magical abilities. And for this particular book, she is living across the street from where a magical murder happened. And that's when we meet Thomas Bloodsworth, who is a nearly 500-year-old vampire. And they both already kind of know each other from mutual friends. So he's pretty trusting of her. And he asks if she wants to be a investigative journalist with him for this particular case because the Queen and King of the Fae are really interested in getting to the truth and wanting their people in the other world, which is a different dimension, to know what happened.
So is there kind of like a secret society almost element to this or aspect to this supernatural element of this story here? Because you say it's urban fantasy, right? So it takes place in an urban setting, but there are kind of like these fantastical type of creatures in here. However, it's not necessarily, what I'm gathering is it's not necessarily overt, as in they're not just like, or are they walking around? Like, in other words, like if it's just like the regular civilians, can they see these creatures?
No, you have to basically be psychic.
Okay, so
There's
that's where the journalist's actual power is.
Yeah, she has
She can
enough.
see them.
Yeah, she has enough Fey blood down the line because the fairies. They, specifically elves for her, sometimes they do bad things to humans, and you see it a lot in Celtic mythology they're not elves, but they're called fae, and sometimes it is
These are not the
confirmed.
cute and cuddly kind of Tinkerbell type fairies.
No, no. But she also has sidekicks as well. So she can see ghosts. She sees everything that you and I could not see because we're not psychic, right? We don't have fey blood enough to be able to see their glamour.
Okay.
And so she has a ghost in her closet named George. He was poisoned for his life insurance by his wife in the 50s, and then she has a
In the
fairy,
50s.
which is he's been around a long time. He can move stuff, he's been practicing, right? And then she has an office fairy, which is just technically a house fairy, named Drusille, and he can flutter. So he's a fairy, and there are different types of fae and fairies and elves and all that stuff. And it's basically kind of just a wrap up of what most neo-pagans and Wiccans believe, because that's what I grew up. I used to be neo-pagan. I'm not particularly making anything up. I'm just picking and choosing belief systems, or like specifics of what this makes sense within the book series in the world, because
Right, right.
not always going to make sense. There's a lot of, you got to have faith that there's a ghost in your house type of thing. So I try to make it make sense,
Right,
but
right.
it's really just
No,
talk to a Wiccan, talk to a neo-pagan. That's what they believe.
okay, so you're kind of including, you know, bits and pieces of that lore. So that's pretty cool. I will say that I like the fact that there is, you know, a vampire. You made room for the vampires in this story, and I will say that, you know, vampires are notorious for being seductive, and I have to say I am a sucker for a hot vampire story, even if the MC is several centuries my senior. But however, I will say that you have come up with quite a catchy tagline for this series, which I think is helpful for anyone who may be concerned about how hot it gets. And would you like to share what that tagline is?
Oh yeah, well, it's a new-ish trend. It's all slain, no lane urban fantasy, because there's a
What's that? All slay and no lay.
Yep.
Is that what you say? Is that what you say?
Yeah, all slain, no lane.
Excellent. So what does that mean exactly for, you know, inquiring minds want to know?
Yeah, there's no romance between Tessa and
specifically no romance.
No. So all
I thought you were just
slain
going to say no sex on the page, which
No,
that
yeah,
is
so
what that means, right?
Yeah, so all slain means there's not, maybe there's a little bit of romance, but it's really like there's no romance between the main character and someone else. That's not Tessa, and that's not Bloodsworth. Tessa's 21, 22. Bloodsworth is 500. It's not going to happen. They're not like that.
Age gap.
They never
Hashtag
were.
age gap.
Yeah, and they never were, even like in the beginnings of high school biology class when I came up with it. That was a long time ago. But with the all slain, no lane, because there's so much romance in especially paranormal, which is like ghosts and vampires and some other stuff, which I don't write. And I don't really read all that much. It's kind of also seeped into urban fantasy. And so that's just telling the urban fantasy reader, this does not have romance. If you don't want to read romance, this is a great series for you, because now it has basically become automatic that there is a romance, and it's a very heavy romance subplot, if not the plot of urban fantasy. And it wasn't like that before, but I don't know what. Well, okay.
Is it that
Buffy is pretty romancy. So
would you say that urban fantasy is usually primarily like a YA kind of category, and that's why it's kind of went that way?
No, the urban fantasy, even the published ones, like the Iron Druid Chronicles by Kevin Hearn and the Sookie Stackhouse, which is like,
well, I don't know them, but
yeah, even though those are all adult, I can't think of an urban fantasy that's a young adult.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's mainly adult, and a lot of it is self-published or small press.
I've only read a couple myself, and they were both indie, and both of them, if I remember correctly, both had kind of a romance subplot.
Yeah, so like that all slain, no lane is just saying we're getting down to the business, which is the business here involving mysteries, involving magical murders or magical beings, and it's not going to be any romance or romantic. They're just, Tessa and Bloodsworth become very close, but that does not mean that it is romantic.
Okay. Well, there it is, people. That is Obsidian Murders, which is this book one of the Midnight Detective Agency, which is available now. And book two is actually set to release in 2024. Now, one question I wanted to ask is, so is this series, is this like a kind of a standalone type of series? Like, will you be able to read these books out of order, or is this like a sequential kind of series?
Yeah, you're gonna want to start in the beginning, one,
Okay.
2, 6. I guess no, I'm gonna take that back. I was gonna say maybe, but no, you can't, because there's some stuff that it just would not make sense, even in book two, especially like how did Drusilla get from the office fairy to the house fairy, and why and George and Drusilla fighting, like that would be completely missed. So, and then it would just get confusing. So yeah, start with the first book. And then
Okay.
we're gonna go from there.
All right. And so before I let you go, this is something I usually ask all my guests, but I would like to know if there is another indie author or a specific indie book and another, say, Booktube creator that you recommend.
Yeah, so the Booktube creator, I would go with Bad is Rad. If you like horror, she does lots of horror stuff. She also does splatterpunk, or she's just now getting into it. But yeah, she's mainly horror. And also Bookish Kaz does fantasy if you're into fantasy.
I know Kaz.
And yes, and I am gonna go with that I read, this year. Uh, The Last Temptations of Iago Wick by Jennifer Rainey. It's a trilogy, and it's like gas lamps, steampunk. We get a little like Victorian demons. I don't know how oh no, I do remember. Amazon randomly recommended it to me. And usually they get it wrong because I have interesting reading searches. Like it can't figure out what it should recommend to me that I will actually buy it. So sorry for the people that know about also bots that are writers. I mess up your also bots all the time. But that one they finally got right, and she's indie, and I just love a good demon story. And it's 3 books, really nice. The first book is fantastic, and the other books are great too. But like, it's a great name as well. I love
All
Iago.
right. Well, that works. And of course, you also shout out, who was that other one? That Splatterpunk Chandler? Who's that?
Oh yeah, well yeah, Chandler Morrison. I don't know if he's indie anymore. He used to be.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of counts. There's two or maybe 3 of his books in his backlist that are still self-published. The newer stuff that's a little bit more hardcore, especially Dead Inside.
Oh, he's the one that wrote that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I do notice that there is this kind of hybrid. There's the hybrid too, the
yeah.
hybrid publishing where it's like you get a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. You have some indie stuff, and then there's some stuff because of your success. Like if you gain success as an indie, that might attract the attention of some trad pub as well. There's people have a little bit of both. But I want to thank you for sharing your time with me and introducing this series to us, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, and you have a great rest of your stream, month, year, Halloween. I know it's
Yes. Have a happy Halloween, and I'll be looking forward to hearing what you think of that Rosemary's Baby movie once you watch that. Because I know that you've read the novel.
Yeah, for tomorrow. Yeah, novel perfection. Let's see about
the novel is good. I liked it as well.
5 out of 5 stars. I see why it's capital L literature, classic horror for sure.
Good stuff. Hey, take care, huh?
Thank you.
All right, all right. All right, we'll keep things moving here. Yeah. Okay. So next up here, I have something from, I believe this one comes from, let's see, we have, yes, from the Facebook. This one comes from Barbara Rein. Barbara Rein shares a link to her book that we're going to check out. I believe all three tonight has something to do with, you know, things that would be Halloween appropriate, if you will. And this next one is entitled Tales from the Eerie Canal, 22 Stories of the Delightfully Dark and Creepy by Barbara Rein. Yes, Nicole, it's a good conversation. I'm glad we finally had a chance to talk. I know we've kind of gone back and forth with the tag videos, but it was a pleasure to finally get a chance to kind of officially become acquainted. Okay, there is the cover. Now, one thing I'll say, I have seen that cover before. I think that's like a stock. I think that might be a stock image on the cover there, because I'm pretty sure that I actually have read another horror collection that kind of had a similar cover on there. So I guess that's like one thing I will just say, kind of like, I guess that is kind of like one, because normally I'll be the first person to say, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. But I will say that, you know, having seen this before, that is one downside to kind of using either stock images, licensed stock images, or universal, like the generic universal covers provided by, like, say, KDP or something like that, is because it makes it so makes it harder for your book to kind of stand out amongst, you know, all the other authors that kind of used the same type of book cover. But other than that, let's see. It says, regardless of that, I would say we actually have some quotes here. It says, best book of the year by Florida Writers Association for the year of 2021. And short story writer of the year by Intuition magazine for 2021. So let's see what we have here. What we have in this collection is we have Murder by Toilet Plunger, Revenge by Pie, Famous, Wealthy, Living It Up, and Dead. So 22 stories in search of a spine to tingle. A floodgate of horror light short stories, goosebumps, not gore, it says in parentheses, drenched with delightfully creepy twists for fanatics of Twilight Zone and psychological thrillers. It's a page-turning mix of fantasy, horror, sci-fi, and romance, it says here, with a kick of wit. We have some quotes here, and then there is some, looks like she shares some log lines. Let's read some of these log lines here, see what we have. It says, one is two sisters with a secret past, an innocent road trip, and a wind that blows them straight into their nightmare. Another one is a subway where time plays tricks and youth is one stop away. Let's see. Another one is an exclusive resort. Not everyone gets invited. Not everyone gets to leave. Another one is he's losing his mind. He knows where it's going. He wants it back. And we have 223 pages here. 223 pages, teen and young adult horror, fantasy, anthologies, and short stories. Yes, very good. All right. I have one more book to share with you guys tonight. And this one's coming from Joseph Roy Wright. See what Joseph Roy Wright has for us tonight. This one is called Paranormal Homicide 2, The Cult of Lucien by Joseph Wright. All right. Let's see what this one's about. It is Halloween in 1978. Lori Ripley has been haunted by demons her whole life. However, on this night, demons rise onto Earth in search for her. They call themselves the Cult of Lucien. They wish to resurrect their dark lord Lucien by sacrificing her life so the devil can possess Lori's body. They have chosen her, for she does not know that her resistance to spirits has given her unknown occult powers. Police officers Jason Arquette. I wonder if he's related to David. Police officers Jason Arquette and Michael Loomis soon fall into this hideous rabbit hole as the demonic cultists kill many in the British town of Runcorn in search of Lori. Can they save this poor woman, or will the Dark Lord rise once again to rain hell onto Earth? 71 pages on this novella. We have occult horror and occult fiction. All right. And those are the books, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the books for tonight. So you know what you can do. You can head on over to my community tab and you can vote for which one out of those 3 books you thought had the most text appeal. That's right. So in other words, which one out of those 3 aforementioned titles would you be most likely to pick? And if you would like to discover more from the independent market, you can head on over to my shorts tab or my playlist tab, and you can open yourself up some mystery packs. Inside each mystery pack, there is a cover card that reveals a book from the independent market that was recognized by the Live Free, Live Rich network. And inside the description section of each video, there's a link to an editorial written specifically on that book by yours truly. All right, moving things right along here. Let's get into some announcements. If you guys are looking to do a little networking, you want to, you want to find, maybe some other people, supporters of the indie scene, other indie creators, or just people who, or just find other people who are interested in indie books, indie entertainment, indie art, what have you. I've got a little advertisement for you. Being a proactive supporter of independently created arts and entertainment means keeping a finger on the pulse of what's happening around the indie scene. But unfortunately, when it comes to underground activity, it's not always so easy for individual artists to be seen. So if you're tired of feeling as though you are stuck in the shadows, then I welcome you to keep me on the up and up with whatever it is you're working on, or feel free to share something that you've already made with the rest of the network on one of our 2 group servers. This is an open invitation to artists and supporters alike who simply want to focus on appreciating independently created arts and entertainment. I created both the Gilded and the Discord server as open forums where not only are you encouraged to share your projects, but also to foster a pro-networking environment in which both creators and fans can discover one another and make connections without worrying about being in violation of some stupid rule. Cheers. Yes, I am not a fan of any stupid rules. Oh shit, look who's in the house. Hey, Thomas. What's going on, my man? Says, oh man, I wish I knew you're going to be a guest, Nicole. I would have made it to the beginning. Yes, you did miss it. We had Nicole from Nicole's Bookish Nook here live on the air, talking about her book. That was a treat indeed. But I am glad that you are here as well, good sir. Nice to have you while I'm live on the air. How you been? Any new exciting developments? Now, for those of you who are interested in staying on the up and up with what I have going on with my projects or anything pertaining to the entire Live Free, Live Rich brand in general, you can head on over to my website at www.livefreeliverich.com. Right on the homepage, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter, where I send out exactly 1 newsletter every week, every Saturday, which will provide you with all the pertinent links from the previous week. And last but not least, I got one for my peers in the writing community. The Storytellers Society, still accepting open submissions. This is a public collaborative project, basically an outreach program, really, for my peers in the writing community. What I'm looking for is flash fiction for this project. Flash fiction for this project is fiction that is between 500 all the way up to 2,000 words. This can be fiction that you actually have published somewhere else, so long as you own the copyright and you have the right to give me permission to republish it on my blog, where it will be free for public viewing from now and indefinitely. Just because you submit something doesn't mean that your work will automatically be published. It does need to be approved, but if approved, then you will effectively book yourself a room at what I've dubbed the Hotel del SS, where all the members of the Storyteller Society stay. Yes, indeed. It is quite beer delicious. Yep. That's good. Good to hear. Or read, I should say. Let's keep it moving. You doing anything special on for Halloween? Watch any scary movies? Do you like scary movies? All right, let's get into the final segment for tonight, and that is Hot Topic for Content Creators. Hot Topic for Content Creators. This is where I pitch a hot topic to you, and then you, if you feel so inclined, turn around and create your own content on said topic, or else you're always welcome to join these conversations by dropping some comments down below and or checking out any of my previously pitched hot topic videos. Tonight, what are we going to talk about tonight? Oh, it's going to get hot. Tonight, we're talking about representation in fiction. That's right. So let's see what I've prepared for you guys tonight. When it comes to representation in fiction, people often like to bitch, whine, and complain about all the cliches and stereotypes in various mediums of storytelling. Say what you want about authors who utilize cliches and stereotypes, but if you can't tell me the difference between tropes and archetypes, then you ain't doing nothing but talking shit. That's right. So tonight, I want to start a conversation on the subject of archetypes and tropes, because I believe this subject is relevant to this hot topic discussion, as I think it will contribute to furthering our understanding of representation in fiction. So what's an archetype? Let's start off with archetypes. What's an archetype? An archetype, now mind you, these are, I'm kind of just putting things in my own words here. I didn't want to just out and out regurgitate what was on, a Wikipedia or anything like that. So I'm kind of just giving you my as I understand it from my perspective as a creative writer. Okay. So an archetype, but feel free to chime in if you think I left anything out or you have your own kind of take on the meaning of these terms here. But anyways, an archetype is also known as a stock character. Think of archetypes as the base character model that comes to mind when, for example, someone names a specific role. Like if I said the character is a magician, then you may imagine several cliches associated with a character who fulfills such a role. For example, they may wear a pointy hat and wield a magic wand. Those are cliches associated with that particular role, which are recognized as common elements of a specific archetype. Of course, the magician as an archetype doesn't have to wear a pointy hat and wield a magic wand, but perhaps is just known for their tendency to cast spells, which is a stereotype associated with that archetype. I suppose the best way to distinguish the difference between a character cliche from your typical stereotype would be to think of cliches as a common interest, whereas a stereotype is linked to a character's physical features and or behaviors. For instance, if we were to create the basic white female as a character archetype, at least according to the internet, then a cliche version of that stock character would probably wield a pumpkin spiced drink during the autumn season. And stereotypically, she would spend her time taking selfies and talking about Taylor Swift. That is an example of an archetype. So now let's talk about tropes. A trope is a common motif or pattern in storytelling that is specifically tied to character, plot, narrative, and or genre. Not to be confused with cliches, which may refer exclusively to aspects of a specific character, plot device, or a narrative structure. So an example of a plot cliche could be a cataclysmic event, like an earth-shattering meteor is making its way towards Earth. That is often recognized as a plot device that has been used many times before and therefore makes it a cliche that has quite oftenly been used as an inciting incident for a variety of stories. So on its own, that is not a trope. But depending on how that event ties in with the story's narrative, that plot device could take on some sort of metaphorical meaning. And that's what would make it a trope. Here's another example. So, plot device. Here's the plot device. Aliens invade Earth. Okay? Aliens invade Earth. That is a plot device. All right? It's not a trope, just a cliche. It's a plot device cliche. Now, narrative. Here's the narrative. Something fundamental to humanity is realized. On its own, not a trope. It's just a cliche. It's a common narrative theme, okay? That is realized by the main character or realized by the reader or the viewer, if we're talking about cinema, etc. But if you combine the two, both the plot device and the narrative, you get aliens invade Earth and something fundamental to humanity is realized. Now, suddenly, you got yourself the making of a science fiction trope. So a trope may also combine elements of characterization, which may include specific archetypes with plot devices and or conventional narratives. For instance, the bad boy archetype plus Mr. Nice Guy archetype plus love triangle plot device, including a female MC, equals a trope typically featured in young adult fiction. So just to recap, think of archetypes as just flat, basic character models that are universally recognized without being personalized and typically fulfill a common role. So, like token characters, for example. Tropes, on the other hand, are akin to formulas, but a better metaphor for describing what a trope is would be to compare it to a common dish. For instance, most people know the common ingredients used to create spaghetti. All right. Any author with minimal skill can serve the reader some spaghetti, but really it's going to be their specific recipe that earns their spaghetti chef's kiss from the reader. Get it? So I hope that was helpful for identifying and distinguishing the differences between archetypes and tropes. If you have any questions or would like to add anything of value to the discussion, then feel free to weigh in on this conversation. I want to see if you guys are saying anything about this. All right. And that is the hot topic for this week. Now I'd like to say my goodbyes and we'll get into the wrap up. But first, let me put on a little theme music for you guys. What do you think? You want to put on, how about, let's get rich. Let's get some 80s. Let's get some 80s in here. And we can chit chat for a minute. Hey, put on a little 80s synth. We can chit chat for a minute. I want to see, we'll go back through the comments here, see what you guys have been talking about. So Thomas says, Thomas has been great, and that's good. I like to hear that. He says, doing anything, oh yeah, because I said doing anything special for Halloween. And apparently Thomas said, yes, I decided to dress up as a writer, but a sexy, slutty writer. Yes, yes. It's just whatever it is, plus sexy and or slutty added at the end. So, you know, dress up as a cat, but it's got to be a sexy cat or whatever it is. I can't think of anything witty right now. What does this mean? They need more Jonathan types in novels. An archetype? Jonathan as an archetype? Should I be my own base character model? Is that what you're telling me? I should be a base character model? Nicole is not impressed with your shit right now, Thomas. Uh-oh. Hey, Herman! Fancy seeing you here. Herman says, I just got a proof of concept for the cover of my next book. Awesome, man. Good for you. That's exciting. I don't even want to know what's going on right now between you two. I'm just going to assume we're still talking about Halloween costumes. Can you wear a plot device? I think Ghostbusters wear. I think the Ghostbusters wear their plot device, don't they? The plasma rifles. Nicole's got the hookup. Nice. Oh, you are a fan of Dream Theater, are you? Dream Theater is okay. I like select songs. They're like one of those. Dream Theater is one of those hit or miss bands for me. Like, they have select songs that I like. One off the top of my head is "As I Am." I like that tune. I think that's a fun one. Yes. I don't know what kind of cliches. Hamming it up, maybe. Would that be the, or would that be the stereotype? The stereotypical Jonathan likes to ham it up, especially when he is live on YouTube. Yeah, Dream Theater. I think you might like them, Nicole. Based on your taste, I've had enough experience based on your taste in kind of rock, metal. They're kind of in between rock, metal. I think they lean, for a lot of their songs, they lean more on rock side than metal, but they're kind of a mix. Maybe a prog rock or prog type band. Yeah, see, Thomas knows. Yeah. Yeah, progressive. You have what, like some 9 Inch Nails, something? A little Marilyn Manson, perhaps? The soundtrack to the Lost Boys movie, which is a phenomenal soundtrack, by the way. And also a fun movie that has stood the test of time. Says The Cramps, Captain Clegg, and The Night Creatures by Rob Zombie. Ah, yes, Rob Zombie. There you go. I like a little bit of Rob Zombie. Some of his stuff is okay. The Living Dead Girl. Are you really? You're not. You guys, yeah. So you gonna be watching any movies for Halloween? I know Nicole said that she's gonna be watching Rosemary's Baby for Halloween, which is a good pick. I've already watched. I've watched some more like low budget horror movies. I watched. What did I watch recently? I watched Demons 1 and Demons 2. The Argento ones, Dario Argento ones, or inspired ones. But I guess a more known, those were like cult classics. Watched them for the first time this year, actually. The first one is the first one that takes place in the movie theater. That one's like, the plot is like, it gets a little bit slow. It starts off pretty strong, but it gets a little bit slow, and they're both kind of weird. I mean, it's Italian horror. What do you expect? Italian horror is kind of, it's more of a visual experience than it is a kind of a, I don't know. If you know anything about Italian cinema, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But then I also watched, just the other day, I finished out the George A. Romero Dead trilogy, the original Living Dead trilogy. So you have Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. And I didn't realize after all these years, I never even watched Day of the Dead. I've seen Dawn of the Dead before, both versions. There's like a newer version, like a Zack Snyder version of Dawn of the Dead, which I liked that one too. That one was pretty fun. But I do like the original Dawn of the Dead isn't bad either. It's just a bit methodical. Like, it's not like plot wise, it's kind of like kind of a little bit meanders a bit. It's very, what I mean by methodical, it's really just about how it's like, what if, it's like one of those what if movies. Like, what if there was a zombie outbreak and, people were to hold up in a mall? Like, what would they do? Just like one of those type of movies where it's like, it's just supposed to inspire your imagination. Like, what would you do if you were in their shoes type of movie, which can be fun. But Day of the Dead, though, Day of the Dead was, I will say this much, the special effects in all the movies are good. And Day of the Dead has like the best special effects as far as the gore, the makeup, all that stuff for a zombie flick. But the narrative in it, like, I could not get behind the narrative. Like, I'm just like, it's just so cringe. Like the whole point of if you know anything about Romero's, Living Dead series, they're all basically social commentaries. They're metaphorical. All three of them are, for different ways. The first movie is kind of just a straight monster creature feature with some unintentional kind of, because he said in the commentaries that it wasn't meant to be a social commentary, but it just so happened to kind of come across as a social commentary because of the times that the movie came out and the types of characters that he casted for the roles. But he did not intend it for it to be. However, the second movie, Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, very much are kind of social commentaries. Like Dawn of the Dead, more a social commentary about consumerism, the zombies in the shopping mall doing what they know best, And then Day of the Dead was, for me, what I think Day of the Dead was more about was like very much a liberal leaning kind of like trying to make you feel sympathetic for the zombies, which I think it kind of missed the mark. And it came across as kind of cringy and cheesy for me. And they really, really like hammered home that the military guys that were working with the scientists were the bad guys. But it's like, really, if you take a step back and you think about it, like, I would be just as pissed off if I was one of those military guys and like, what the hell are we doing here, guys? You're playing your little science. You know, you're Bill Nye the Science Guy with these friggin' zombies, and to what end? You know, I would be just as angry. I probably wouldn't go as crazy, but then again, I'm also not living through a zombie outbreak, allegedly. Well, what about you guys? You guys are watching any spooky movies? Let's see what we had here. Nightmare Before Christmas. That's a classic one to watch this time of the year. Yeah. I'll have to revisit those albums. I know they have a lot. They have quite an extensive discography, those guys. And I don't think I've listened to all of their albums. Oh yeah, that's that robot one. That Android one. It seemed a little bit creepy. Kind of get the Chucky vibes from it. But more like a sci-fi horror, you know, leaning more to like the sci-fi end, but I could be wrong. Maybe she goes nuts. I think even though I think Chucky is more frightening looking, less so over the years. I mean, I think if I was to see like a Chucky doll, you know, in real life, I probably wouldn't be too terrified of it. I mean, it's the friggin' thing stands maybe a foot and a half tall. I mean, really, how scary could that be if you're a grown man? But you know, there's just the creep factors there, which is why I think the Megan character would probably be a lot more scary because just because of how, you know, if it moves, it looks like it could move a lot faster than Chucky could. The Bride of Chucky. They started to get a lot more campy towards the end. I didn't watch all the Chucky ones, and I watched. Did you check out that reboot that they did not that long ago? They had like a reboot of the Child's Play, but they made it a net. I think it was it's just a show. It was a streaming show, and I watched the first episode, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what this is. This is not for me. They just start making, it's just like, it's one of those like new age type of, you just can tell that it's made for a modern audience, let's just say, you know, it's very on the nose with the type of demographic that they're trying to cater to. And for me, largely, I find that, not always, but for me, once I see that coming through or shining through in a movie's narrative, like, it just kind of turns me off, you know, unless the plot can carry it, you know, because usually with those type of narratives, like where, like, you know, the characters are just checking the boxes and all that stuff, like, you know, you start to lose me at that point. Speaking of representation in fiction. I will say I am not a fan of the jump scare. Jump scares are tired in this day and age. Let's be honest. Jump scares are tired. They've been overdone. They've been done to death. You almost, you know, it happens, you know, just about, it gets to the point where if you've watched enough horror, you can almost like anticipate that there's going to be a jump scare. It's just what kind of jump scare? Is it going to be a fake jump scare where it's like, oh, it's the cat. The cat was hiding in the cupboard. Or is it an actual jump scare, you know? You want Seed of Chucky? I don't think I made it that far. I think that's when I stopped. Aside from watching the one episode from the reboot, the only other ones I saw was the first 3 and Bride of Chucky. That's not a movie. That's not a movie. You're thinking of the Mandela effect. Or is that one? No, I'm thinking of the Mandela effect. I stand corrected. I'm thinking of the Mandela effect. I'm thinking of that other genie movie that was supposed to be with there was another guy, Shazam. I was thinking of Shazam or something like that. Is that actually a movie? Good Lord. You guys ever watch this scary movies? You like spoof movies? You know, Scary Movie 1, Scary Movie 2. I'm not huge on spoof movies, I have to say. They're really just there, let's be honest. The spoof movies or the parody movies are really just there for like people who kind of like that combination of like comedy and nostalgia. But they can be fun. Oh yeah, 13 Ghosts. I like the I don't think I've watched the 1960s version. I like the newer one, like the remake that they did. That one was pretty cool. There's good death scenes in that one. Well, I do thank you guys for showing up. It's been fun. I will say that is it for me for this live stream. And I hope you guys had some fun. And I hope y'all discovered something new. But don't fret, because guess what? I will be back here for you next week. Same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 6 p.m. Pacific. And hope y'all have a good week. It's the night before Halloween, and for Sally and her friends, it was meant to be a night of mischief and magic. But when they actually summon a creature from hell, it soon becomes a night of mayhem. It will be a night they will never forget if they can survive. Mischief and mayhem intensifies on Devil's Night.
This offended my sensibilities.